This video is to be used as an introduction/review for the music theory that we're going to do this year. All the stuff we're going to do in this video is for the fundamentals of music and really basic stuff, and we'll delve more deeply into all these concepts as we go through the year. The first concept we're going to talk about is beat. Beat is the steady pulse in the music that we sing, play, whatever. You feel it in pop music also. It's that steady foot tap, so it makes your head bob. It's that steady feeling that you feel in music. Now we're going to talk about rhythm. Rhythm is different than beat. Rhythm is what we see on the page. It's how we put music into long and short values. So rhythm and beat are different. Rhythm is what we see and how we play it. Beat is that steady underlying pulse in music. You see these two dots behind me? Probably wondering, are those creepy eyeballs kind of hanging out behind Mr. Blaine? No, these are actually note heads. And these are very important in music because you see them with rhythm and with all the music that we see the melodies, and we use it with solfege. Note heads are those little dots. Now, also there are things that go on them called stems. And when the stems can go both up and down. So when stems go up, they go on the right side of the note, like that. And when stems go down, they go on the left side of the note, like that. So stems go up, stems go down. It just depends on where we are in the music. And we'll go into more detail to that later. Rests. Rests. So, action. In music, there are a lot of symbols that represent pitch, rhythm, what we have to do, how loud or soft we get. There are a lot of different types of symbols in music. We just looked at note heads, which are a couple of the symbols out there, but we're also going to look at these symbols, which are rests. Okay, so up on the board I draw 3 different types of rests. This is a quarter rest, and it has 1 beat of value. We talked about beat before. It's that steady pulse. This is a half rest, and this has 2 beats. And I like to remember half rests because they look like hats, little hats on your head. And then this is a whole rest, and that has 4 beats in it. And the reason the way I can remember what whole rests are is that if they're below the line, it makes it look like there's a hole in the line. So we have a quarter rest, half rest, whole rest, and the quarter rest has 1 beat, half rest has 2 beats, whole rest has 4 beats. We have to have some place to put all those symbols that we learn about in music class. We have to have somewhere to put it. And that place where we put them is called the staff. And the staff is made up of 5 lines and 4 spaces. So this is what a staff looks like. I'm going to draw one for you. So we have 5 lines. It's super easy to make. We have 4 spaces. So 5 lines, 4 spaces. So this is a staff. Now, in music, we need to know where we are in terms of pitch, and we do that using clefs. And we're going to look at 2 types of clefs today. It's the treble clef and the bass clef. I'm going to draw a treble clef for you and a bass clef, and I'll explain a little bit about them as I go. So, to make a treble clef, you draw a line like that, super easy, and then you come off the right side of the stem that you made. It comes down and swoops around. It always swoops around the second line from the bottom because it's very specific that way, and we'll talk about that later why that is. And the next clef is the bass clef. So I'm going to draw a line here. And the bass clef looks like this. A little dot, swoops around like that, and we have 2 dots that go around the second line from the top. And we have to do that because it's very specific, because these clefs have alternate names, and we'll talk about that later. So we have the treble clef in a line, and you swoop to the right and around the second line from the bottom, and the bass clef where you swoop around like that, You have 2 dots like that, and it goes around that line. So it's very specific, and you cannot forget to do, especially the swoop and the 2 dots. So the alternate name for the treble clef is the G clef, because that little swoop swoops around the line of G when we're in the treble staff. So swoops around the line right there, and that's the G line. Okay. Now another one is the other name for this clef, for the bass clef, is the F clef. And it has that name because these 2 dots right here, they encompass around this line right here, which in the bass clef is the F line. So it's very useful in case you forget what the letters and of the lines and spaces are. You can always say, okay, what's the G clef? Oh yeah, that's a G, and you can go from there. So the treble clef alternate name is G clef. The bass clef alternate name is F clef. So the next part of your worksheet, it asks you to draw a staff with the treble clef and the notes of the lines and the notes of the spaces. So you're going to draw a treble clef. So remember how to draw the treble clef. Put a line through, a little swoop, or a circle goes around that line right there. Now, it asks you to write out the notes for the lines and the spaces. So we have E, G, B, D, F. E, G, B, D, F. Okay. So the lines and spaces have letter names, and I'm sure you've heard of that been said. So, and a good way to remember the lines for me is Elvis goes belly dancing Fridays. So E, G, B, D, F, Elvis goes belly dancing Fridays. Those are the notes on the lines. Now, there are notes in the spaces. So we have that note in all these spaces. And this note letter name is F. This is A, this is C, this is E. So we have F, A, C, E. Now, this is very cool because it makes a word just by itself, face. So we have notes that go on the lines, or we have notes that go on the spaces. So a good way to again remember the lines, Elvis goes belly dancing Fridays, and I like to tie it together with the space notes, and he fell in his F, A, C, E, face. So we have lines, line notes, and space notes. The next thing we're going to talk about is something that's really, really useful when it comes to especially sight reading and just being able to see notes. We saw how the notes, we have E, G, B, D, F, the lines and the spaces, F, A, C, E. But music doesn't stop just within the lines and spaces of music. It actually goes outside of the staff, as you can see here. It has notes that go outside. And to know what note they are that are outside of the staff is we use ledger lines. See, there's little lines here. They show us where the notes are and what letter names they are. So if you know like the musical alphabet, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and it starts over A, B, C, D, E, F, G, we remember that Elvis, or E, is the bottom line. And if you go back one from E, we have the letter D. As you can see, it doesn't stop there. So if we go backwards here, so we have a D, this is a C, that's a B, that's an A. So the ledger lines tell us what notes they are outside the staff. So if you ever see if there was a music going on here and then it so happens to go under the staff, you'll know what notes those are. So we use ledger lines. So ledger lines are the things that show us where the notes are below and above the staff. So we're going to look at above the staff now. So we remember Elvis goes belly dancing Fridays. The top of the line is F. If we go one above F, we have a G, an A, a B, and a C. So if you look at the ledger lines, tell us where those notes are as we go above the staff. So we use ledger lines to figure those out, and they're super helpful when we're trying to sight read and especially like playing music and etc. In music, we have these things called half steps and whole steps. And they're very important when it comes to reading music, especially once we get into what we call chromatic type of music, where we started adding different accidentals to music. So a half step is the smallest interval in music, so like a minor second, and a whole step actually is 2 half steps put together. I'm going to explain this to you using the keyboard, and on your worksheet you're going to create your own keyboard and show where the whole and half steps are. If you are confused about this, make sure you come and see me about it. Send me an email, whatever. I can explain it more clearly. So we're going to take a trip to the piano, and I'm going to teach you about whole and half steps. So what you see here is the piano keyboard, and we're specifically going to look from middle C to the C above that. As you can see, there's white keys and black keys. So we have the pitch letter names that we know in the alphabet, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. But we like to see this on the piano is the middle C. This is a D. This is the E. This is the F. This is the G. This is the A. This is the B. And this is the C above that. Okay, so that's very specific. Okay, now there are whole and half steps in that little scale that I did. This so happens to be the C scale. So between C and D is a whole step. Between D and E is a whole step. Between E and F, that's a half step, interestingly enough. Between F and G, whole step. If you're between G and A, whole step. For between A and B, whole step. If we're between B and C, is a half step. And you might have noticed something as we went along, that you could see that between, for example, C and D, which was a whole step, there's a black key in the middle of that. And that's where we can find our half steps. So if we go up, that's a half step, another half step, another half step, and like we said before, between E and F, that's just a natural half step. Between F and F sharp right there, that's a half step, another 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 half step. So what I'm going to ask you to do is I want you to draw from the C to C right here. You're going to make your own keyboard. So you're going to cut out everything above it, but I just want you to draw C to C, and I want you to add these black keys in it. Okay? So I'm going to write C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A sharp, B, C. And now, but cool enough on the way down, because we have to be able to do a different thing. So we have C to B, B flat, A flat, G flat, F, E flat, D flat, and C. Okay, so if you notice, those black keys were called something different on the way up and the way down. So if you, in music, if you want to raise a note, so go up by a half step, you sharp it. So if we want to raise C up a half step, we call it a C sharp. If we want to call a D up a half step, it's a D sharp. But going on the way down, if you want something to go down or make it go down by a half step, you use flats. So you have an E if you go down to E flat, D flat. So if you want to raise something half step, you use a sharp. If you want to lower a note, you go down with a flat. The next thing we're going to talk about are those pesky things called key signatures. And I just heard each and every one of you groan about that. Just kidding. But we're going to talk about key signatures, and because they're so crucial to what we do in here, especially with sight reading. We use key signatures to find do. Okay. If I were to ask you, we have to look at the front of the staff. Okay. Key signatures always come after the clef. Okay. So first we're going to look at sharp key signatures. Okay. So remember, sharps are those little hashtag looking things. If I ever hear one of you call them a hashtag, I'm going to find you. So let's look at sharps first. So let's use one sharp for an example. So this is the key of G. This is where G is do. Okay. The rule for sharps is, okay, this is the one and only sharp rule. Okay. There are a couple rules for the other ones, but for sharps, the rule is this: the farthest sharp to the right is T. Okay, so like the solfege T, and we go up a half step from there, which is do. So if F sharp is T, we go up one from there. And if we remember our legend lines are from that, up one from F is G. So up a half step from F is G. So this would be the key of G. Now the next one we're going to look at is we're going to add a sharp. So this is two sharps. So remember the rule: farthest sharp to the right is T. Up a half step from there is do. So we have two sharps. The farthest sharp to the right. So to the right is on that space. So this is a C sharp. Up a half step from C sharp is D. Okay, so that would mean D is do. The next rules we're going to talk about are when we see flats. Okay. There are two rules when it comes to flats. So when you see one flat, so this is the first rule. When you see one flat, it is always F. Okay? Or if you want to see it one other way, so don't write this rule down, you can write it down if you want, but always the last sharp to the right is Fa. So Fa, Mi, Re, Do. Okay? So, like I said, one flat is always F, or you can go from the last flat to the right. So this only happens to be this one. Fa, Mi, Re, Do. It'd be an F. So this is the key of F. Now, so we have the first rule, which is when you see one flat, it is always F. The next rule is this. Okay. So I'm going to go to the next key signature. So we have two flats. The next rule is the second to last flat is Do. Okay. So we have only two, so second to last. So this is technically the last. So the second to the last, or the second from the right, is Do. So we go back one. This is the second one. So this would be the key of B flat. And like I've said in the past, you have to write B flat down. If you do not write B flat down, you were only to write B. That's the wrong key signature, because the key of B has its own key signature in sharpland. Right? Let's look at a few more flat signatures. So a little here, okay? So second to last flat, okay, so we go, this is the last, or farthest to the right, second to last. This one is E flat, because it's on the space of E, so this would be E flat. And if you ever have any questions about this, please come see me, okay? The one last one we're going to look at is when there are no sharps or flats in the key signature. Yeah, so sometimes you'll see this where there's no sharps or flats in the key signature. It is always the key of C major. So Do would be C. Or C. Or C up here. So C, when you see no sharps or flats in the key signature, C is Do. We have a few more things to talk about. We have technically two more things to talk about. So the next thing we're going to talk about is time signature. So the time signature is that little fraction-y looking thing that comes after the key signatures. And a lot of times you'll see 4-4, or 3-4, 2-4, or 6-8, or other time signatures. But we're going to look at 4-4 right now. Okay. So this is a time signature or a meter. It's the same thing if you ever hear me say meter. The time signature tells us two things. The top number tells us how many beats are in a measure. Okay. So that helps with rhythm. We talked about rhythm at the beginning of this video. And the bottom number tells us what note value gets the beat. So what does it get that feel, the pulse, the foot tap. And the bottom number, this is 4 if you've ever seen a fraction. 1/4, a quarter that tells us the quarter note gets the beat. Okay? So top number tells us that there are 4 beats in a measure, and the bottom tells us which note gets the beat. Okay? Now, we're going to look at 2 more things. So we have a bar line here, and we're going to create one more thing at the end, what we call a final bar line or double bar line. Okay? So we have bar lines, and these are what we call measures. Okay? We use the bar line to separate out measures, and at the end here, it tells us the piece of music is done, and there's a final bar line, so it's 2 lines, so that means you stop. Sometimes you'll see the final bar line specifically has a really thick line to the end of it, and a little thinner one. And sometimes in music you'll see double bar lines, which are just 2 thin lines, where they are just telling us this might be a different section, we're going to change keys, or something similar to that. So, and before I go, I'm going to tell you about 2 other types of time signatures that you'll see a lot this year. So you'll see a lot of 4/4, see a lot of 2/4, 2/4, a lot of 3/4, and we're also going to get to 6/8, and we'll talk about that when we get there. So these are all things that you're going to need to know. Thank you for reviewing with me, and if you don't know this stuff yet, this is a good introduction to what we're going to do this year. And always, as always, please, that's annoying. We all know that. Please talk to me, email me, whatever you need, I will gladly help you with it. And I will be here, I'm a resource for you, so please ask questions. Thank you, enjoy music theory.